From 2008 to 2013, we had the PG era of WWE, and I'm here to tell you why the PG era is overhated. There's a lot of good things. Not everything was good in that era, so don't twist my words, but there's a lot of good things that happened in that era that I think some people either forget about or don't want to acknowledge. And honestly, the main reason that most people want to hate on that era is because it has the name PG attached to it, like that's a major issue or a problem when it's really not. I get you come from the Attitude Era, which was very pop culture, over the edge, you know, just very hardcore, very violent, very just everything that you would ask for in wrestling. Ruthless Aggression Era also had that as well. So if you grew up in those time frames and you come from Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Mick Foley, Triple H, and all that stuff, and then you go to the PG era where you stopped having blood in matches, you don't do chair shots to the head anymore, you can't really cuss on TV like you used to, no more of the stuff that you grew up on. I understand it's a big change that it was hard for people to adapt to, but we gotta stop the cap at some point. The PG era had a lot of good things in that era that we're going to discuss right now. Before we start, I would greatly appreciate it if you go ahead and subscribe to the channel, man, and turn on the notifications to be updated for all the pro wrestling content that we do right here on this channel, and to be updated when we go live every Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time Zone for the No Name Wrestling Podcast, man. You don't want to miss it. We allow viewers to come on and debate and chat with us from time to time when we do the open mic episodes, so be on the lookout for that, and I hope you guys enjoy this video. The first pay-per-view of the PG era that was acknowledged was SummerSlam 2008. On that show, you had John Cena versus Batista for the first time ever. That was a very good match. You also had the Hell in a Cell match between Undertaker and Edge to end their feud that year, which was also very good. Now, yes, I know the Jericho and Michaels feud started before the PG era was acknowledged, but it ended during the PG era with that ladder match at No Mercy, which is a very good ladder match, one of the best ladder matches in WWE history, in my personal opinion. Now, listen. And for people who may not know this, Jericho actually talked about this and confirmed it on his podcast. The reason that WWE scrapped blood was because of the Great American Bash match between Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho. And WWE was evolving and changing at the time in front of our eyes, and I think we didn't want to see it or want to believe it, but WWE was becoming bigger, more global, and sponsors starting to come in, and Vince, had to make decisions to change things around for the better of the product, for them to make more money, and for a business perspective, which, a lot of fans didn't like that, but it was a smart business move, and they scrapped blood because maybe it could be too violent, too hardcore. I prefer the blood in wrestling, and I think they're going to start to bring it back with this era of WWE, but you know what? It was what it was. Even with them ditching blood, it still didn't change the match quality. They still had a lot of great matches, and it still didn't change the big moments. Jeff Hardy winning the WWE Championship, Armageddon 2008, that was in the PG era, and that's one of the most emotional championship wins that people believe in WWE history, especially if you're a huge Jeff Hardy fan. 2009 Randy Orton, that was PG era. The most menacing, best character work Randy Orton has done throughout his entire career to many people, when he was kicking the McMahons in the head, when he RKO'd Stephanie McMahon in the middle of the ring, when he DDT'd Stephanie in the middle of the ring and then kissed her on the mouth while Triple H was handcuffed in the corner. The house brawl between Triple H and Randy Orton, that was all PG era. That all happened in the PG era. Randy Orton, many people believe 2009 is the best version of Randy Orton throughout his entire career, especially when he shaved his head as a snake and he was bald and everything, walking around with that WWE Championship on his shoulder. You also had the Cena and Orton feud that year, that, the I Quit match, the Hell in a Cell, the Iron Man match that many people love. All that happened in the PG era. Another feud that you could argue was the best feud in 2009, CM Punk versus Jeff Hardy. That happened in the PG era. CM Punk turning heel after that Money in the Bank cash-in, starting to go on that straight edge society gimmick run, and Jeff Hardy was still at the peak of his popularity right there, and they had great matches. Not a Champion, SummerSlam, the Steel Cage match on SmackDown. That all happened in the PG era. The debut of the Nexus, one of the best debuts in WWE history, that happened in the PG era. Now, yes, granted, the way the group ended wasn't great. Wasn't great how they ended it, but how they started it, that debut was still one of the most iconic debuts in WWE history. When did CM Punk's popularity really start to take off? That's right, the Pipe Bomb promo. That happened in 2011. 2011 Pipe Bomb promo is really when CM Punk's popularity really skyrocketed through the roof and really started to take off. And that build, Punk vs. Cena for Money in the Bank, oh my gosh, that's one of the best 5-star matches you will ever see in WWE history. The 434-day championship reign of CM Punk, that also all happened in the PG era, from the beginning all the way till the end. Bro, Rock versus Cena, one of the biggest matches, if not the biggest match in WWE history, happened in the PG era. The 1 year build, the match itself, I mean, they had 2 matches, but we're talking about 28. The 28 match, their best match, one of the best WrestleMania main events ever. The entire build and the match itself all happened in the PG era. The Shield debuting in WWE happened in the PG era as well. One of the greatest factions, maybe the greatest faction in WWE history, depends on who you ask. Their debut and their peak of their run happened in that era. That 4-year WrestleMania storyline between Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, and Triple H, that's one of the best WrestleMania stories ever and one of the greatest storylines in WWE history that happened in the PG era. WrestleMania 25, Undertaker vs. Shawn Michaels, many people consider to be the greatest WrestleMania match all time, happened in the PG era. Then the next year, the Streak vs. Career, some people prefer that to be over 25, happened in the PG era. Then the next year, you had Triple H and Undertaker both return on the same night in a shocking factor where they had an iconic stare down to set up their match at WrestleMania 27. Granted, WrestleMania 27 is one of the worst WrestleManias ever, but that match right there is pretty much the match that carried the show and is one of the best WrestleMania matches ever still. And then the next year, the end of the era Hell in a Cell match, bro, that's one of the best, if not maybe the greatest Hell in a Cell match in WWE history. Depends on who you ask. That also happened in the PG era. That iconic picture of Undertaker, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels on the ramp after, everything and all the story had been told and everything had, just come to an end, bro, that was legendary. What about some iconic returns? Bro, The Rock came back to wrestling in the PG era. He came back to professional wrestling during that time frame. Brock Lesnar also came back to wrestling in that time frame, which is crazy to say because many people never thought we'd see Brock Lesnar back in wrestling ever again, but he came back during the PG era. Dolph Ziggler, when he cashed in the Money in the Bank, that epic pop that he got after WrestleMania 29, and some people consider that to be a top 5, maybe top 3 cash in of all time. That was legendary. You know what era that was in? You can guess it. It was the PG era. I can name a few other things as well. The Hall of Pain run of Mark Henry. I mean, that happened in the PG era as well. Granted, it wasn't too long, but some people feel like that's the best character work Mark Henry was able to tap in throughout his career. The Wyatt family's debut, the introduction of them on the main roster, that all happened in the PG era. I mean, the Yes Movement rise of Daniel Bryan happened in that era as well. 2013 was like the rise and start of Daniel Bryan's huge popularity leading into WrestleMania 30. That all happened in that era. Now, I know some of y'all fans gonna try to be picky out there and try to name the bad stuff that happened. Like I said in the beginning of this video, not everything was good. And that's with every era. There's no era that's perfect. That's just not realistic. Like, there are some eras that are more popular than others that had a lot of great stuff, but there's also some bad stuff you can go back in those eras and look at as well. And the PG era, it had its, flaws, but there's a lot of good things that happened in that era that I think a lot of people don't want to give enough credit for because it has the word PG attached to it. PG era was like that. I'm sorry. I mean, it had a lot of good things in that era. I think there were a lot more good than bad. Just because the PG name is attached to that era doesn't mean that era is bad at all. That's just completely false. I think some people want to downgrade it because it was PG. But there's a lot of good matches, a lot of good stories, a lot of good rivalries, and a lot of big moments that happen in the PG era. Like, the PG era, I'm not gonna lie to you, it's a top 5 era in WWE history, whether people want to look at it or not. It's a top 5 era in WWE history. The product was still good and still watchable. Some people gave up on it after the Attitude Era because the Attitude Era was great, and it was the Attitude Era, right? I mean, it was like pop culture peak of wrestling height. But then things changed and evolved. The company now is bigger than ever. They got sponsor deals coming in. Like, things had to change for the company to progress to get to where it's at right now. And some people didn't want to understand that or didn't want to like it. So they stopped watching, which is your criteria. You could stop watching if you wanted to. That's totally fine. But the PG era had a lot of good things in that era. Just everything that I named right there alone. And some of the things that I didn't even name too. Like, y'all can drop it in the comment section below of some things that I missed, some things I didn't even name that also happened in the PG era that you think were very good. And like I said, there were some bad things, yes. Some bad things that happened in that era as well, but that's with every era. The PG era, I think, needs a lot more respect than it should because it doesn't get the respect that it needs. I'm sorry, somebody had to say it. The PG era deserves more respect and it deserves more flowers, man. The PG era is a top 5 era in WWE history. I'm sorry, it's a top 5 era in WWE history. You have no particular order. The Attitude Era, of course. The Ruthless Aggression Era. The NXT Black and Gold Era. You have the PG era, and then you have the current era that we're in right now. And I don't know what they're calling it. I don't know what the name of this new era is. I can't remember. But this new era, I think, is going to definitely crack that. And it's already cracked that, if you ask me, especially the last 2 years. They revived the product to make it a lot better than what it previously was and what we previously, were getting, in that 2018, 2019 era. So, the PG era, I just think, deserves more flowers. It's a lot better than some people want to remember, and I think some people don't want to give it its respect because the PG name is attached to the era. And I think just because the PG name is attached to the era doesn't make it, a bad era. That's just completely false. The PG era, it was just very good. And if there's some things I didn't even name, that also happened in that era that were very good, leave it in the comment section below. There's probably some things I also missed. But just based off everything that I named that happened in that time frame, I mean, what else can I say? The era had good matches, it had good feuds, it had good stories, it had epic moments. I'm sorry, I'm just saying, PG era was like that. But let me know how you personally feel in the comment section below, man. If you agree or disagree, let me know how you personally feel about it. I'm definitely open to see other people's opinions and perspectives about it. And also, if you want to see more pro wrestling content on the channel, you can click the video right here. And please make sure to subscribe to the channel to be updated for all wrestling content related right here on this platform.